You stumbled into Dreadful Lullaby, a place where bedtime stories take a darker turn. I'm curious, what time are you listening and where are you watching from? Tell me below so I know where my little lullabies are reaching tonight.
The basement tenant. The landlord had been very specific. The basement apartment is off limits. Someone already lives there. They pay their rent on time in cash, slipped under my door on the 1st of each month. Don't bother them, they won't bother you. Mika had nodded, desperate for affordable housing in Portland. The second-floor studio was perfect. Good light, decent neighborhood, walking distance to work. So what if there was a weird tenant in the basement? In this market, you took what you could get. She moved in on a Tuesday, hauling boxes up the narrow stairs. The basement door was at the end of the first-floor hallway, painted the same industrial beige as everything else. No sounds came from below. No light showed under the door. Maybe it was just storage space and the landlord was scamming someone. The first week was quiet. Mika settled into her routine. Work, home, sleep, repeat. She met the other tenants. Amy in 1A, a nurse who worked days. Trevor in 2B, a programmer who seemed to live on energy drinks. Normal people living normal lives. It was the 8th night when she first heard it. A sound from below, transmitted through the building's bones. Not footsteps exactly, more like something heavy being dragged across concrete. Rhythmic, purposeful. It lasted for an hour, then stopped. Yeah, they're weird down there, Trevor said when she mentioned it. I've been here 2 years, never seen them. But the rent's cheap, so he shrugged. The universal gesture of urban compromise. Mika tried to forget about it, but the sounds continued. Always at night, always that same dragging rhythm. She started sleeping with earbuds in, white noise cranked high. It helped, mostly. 3 weeks in, she was coming home late from drinks with co-workers. The street was quiet, just her heels clicking on pavement. As she approached the building, she saw a delivery truck idling outside. 2 men were unloading something large, wrapped in black plastic. Basement delivery, one of them grunted when he saw her watching. You live here? 2nd floor. Good. Stay there. They carried their plastic-wrapped burden to the basement door. 1 knocked. 3 short. 2 long. The door opened just enough for them to slide the package through. Mika caught a glimpse of the interior. Complete darkness and a smell like a butcher shop, left in the sun. The door closed. The delivery men left without a word. Mika didn't sleep that night. She started paying attention to the basement schedule. Deliveries came every Thursday at 2 a.m. Always the same truck. Always packages wrapped in black plastic. Always that same knock. The packages varied in size, some small as a suitcase, others requiring 2 men to carry. What do you think they're doing down there? She asked Amy one evening in the hallway. Amy's face went carefully neutral. I don't think about it. Neither should you. Pay your rent, mind your business, stay alive. Stay alive. But Amy was already closing her door. The dragging sounds were getting louder. And now there were other noises. Wet sounds, clicking like insects. Something that might have been singing, if singing could sound like drowning. Mika's ceiling, the basement's floor, began to develop stains. Dark patches that spread despite no visible water damage. She decided to document it. Started recording the sounds on her phone, taking pictures of the delivery truck's license plate, noting the times and dates of the strange occurrences. If something illegal was happening, she'd have evidence. It was a Thursday night. Mika waited by her window, camera ready. 2 a.m. came and went. No truck. 2:30. Nothing. At 3 a.m. she gave up, went to bed frustrated. The knocking woke her at 4 a.m. But it wasn't at the basement door. It was at hers. 3 short. Too long. Mika froze. Through the peephole, she saw nothing. The hallway was empty. But the knocking came again, insistent. "Who is it?" Her voice cracked. Silence. Then, from directly behind the door, a voice that wasn't quite human. "Delivery. I didn't order anything. Delivery for the basement. You've been watching. You've been recording. Time to meet the tenant." The door began to bend inward, wood creaking. Whatever was on the other side was coming in, locks or no locks. Mika backed away, grabbed her phone, tried to call 911. No signal. The door split down the middle. Through the gap, she saw nothing. A void where the hallway should be. And from that void, something emerged. It wasn't human, wasn't animal, wasn't anything that belonged in a world of fixed forms and stable matter. It flowed like liquid, but had weight like stone. It had what might have been eyes, if eyes could exist in dozens and see in directions that didn't exist. It had what might have been mouths, if mouths could sing equations that rewrote local physics. "Tenant," it said with all its mouths. From below, you wanted to see, so see. Mika saw the truth of the basement apartment. Not a room, but a hole. A puncture in reality that went down, down, down to places where things like the tenant lived. Things that had never been born, could never die, but needed anchors in the real world. Needed feeding, needed rent paid in flesh and fear. The landlord made a deal, the thing explained, its voice like grinding galaxies. "We stay below, we pay rent, we only feed on what's delivered, and no one looks too close." "I'm sorry," Mika whispered. "I'll stop. I'll delete everything." Too late. You've seen. And seeing makes you ours. It reached for her with appendages that violated geometry. Mika ran, crashed through her window in a shower of glass and impossible angles. She fell 2 stories, should have broken bones, but landed soft as a feather. The thing couldn't follow, couldn't leave the building. Terms of the lease. She ran, left everything behind, left Portland behind, moved across the country, changed her name, tried to forget. But she couldn't forget the building's address. Couldn't stop checking online listings. The basement apartment was never advertised, but her old studio was. Again and again. New tenants cycling through. None lasting more than a month. She knew why. The thing in the basement had marked her, and everyone who lived in her old apartment could hear it calling, could feel it pulling, would eventually break and look too close, just like she had. The landlord kept collecting rent, the deliveries kept coming, and the thing in the basement kept feeding, kept growing, kept pushing against the boundaries of its lease. Mika lived in motels now, never stayed anywhere with a basement, never signed a lease, because she'd learned that in the city, in the spaces between human habitation, things that weren't human made their homes, and sometimes they were looking for roommates. She still woke at 2 a.m. every Thursday, still heard that knock in her dreams, 3 short, 2 long, still wondered what would have happened if she'd opened the door, if she'd accepted the delivery, if she'd gone down to the basement to pay her respects to the tenant. Part of her, the part the thing had touched, wanted to go back, wanted to knock on that basement door, wanted to see how much the tenant had grown. But she resisted, kept running, kept her eyes on human things and her ears closed to inhuman songs. Because in the city, there were always basements. And in those basements, there were always tenants. And some of them paid their rent in currencies that predated money, in contracts that predated law. Best not to look too close. Best not to ask questions. Best to pay your rent, mind your business, and stay alive. If you could. The rest stop, hitchhiker. The I-70 through Kansas was the kind of highway that made you understand why people believed in infinity. Flat, straight, endless. Jenna had been driving for 6 hours. Denver in her rear view. St. Louis still a concept more than a destination. The radio had given up finding stations an hour ago. She pulled into a rest stop just past midnight. One of those isolated ones that felt like an island in an ocean of prairie. A few trucks idled in the lot, drivers sleeping off their mandatory rest periods. The building was lit but empty. Vending machines humming their fluorescent loneliness. Jenna stretched, used the restroom, bought a coffee that tasted like burnt water. She was walking back to her car when she saw it. A figure by the exit ramp, tall, too tall, standing with the unnatural stillness of someone who'd been waiting a long time. In the sodium lights, she couldn't make out features, just the suggestion of a human shape. Thumb extended in the universal gesture of the hitchhiker. Every horror movie, every true crime podcast, every warning from her mother said to keep driving. But something about the way it stood, patient, hopeless, already expecting rejection, made her slow down. As her headlights swept across the figure, details emerged. Clothes that might have been fashionable once, but now seemed from no particular era. A face that was almost right but not quite, like an AI's attempt at generating a human. Eyes that reflected her headlights in colors that didn't belong in eyes. She should have accelerated. Instead, she stopped, rolled down the passenger window an inch. "Where you headed?" The words came out without her permission. The figure moved with joints that bent in too many places. East, always east, following the sunrise that never comes. Its voice was like wind through wheat, natural and unnatural at once. Jenna's hand moved to the unlock button, pressed it. The figure flowed into her passenger seat, folding itself to fit the space. "Thank you," it said. "It's been so long since someone stopped." Jenna pulled back onto I-70, immediately regretting her decision. The thing beside her smelled like ozone and old leather. In her peripheral vision, she could see it wasn't maintaining its human shape very well. Edges blurred, features shifted. "How long have you been waiting?" she asked, needing the distraction of conversation. "Since the highway was young. Since before it was a highway. I've walked these plains under different names." It turned to look out the window, and Jenna saw its reflection had too many eyes. But always east, always trying to catch up. Catch up to what? The thing that left me behind. They drove in silence for 20 miles. The speedometer read 70, but the mile markers passed too quickly, or too slowly. Time felt negotiable with this passenger. "You're not human," Jenna said. Not a question. "I was, maybe. The memory blurs. I remember having just 2 eyes, 2 arms, a name that fit in mouths." It laughed, a sound like coyotes choking. "But I've been walking so long, changing with the landscape, becoming what the plains need me to be." What do the plains need? A warning, a reminder that things get lost out here. People, purposes, shapes. The horizon swallows them all. It shifted, and for a moment Jenna saw its true form in the reflection. Something between plant and animal, earth and sky. real and impossible. Why did I stop for you? Jenna asked. Because you're lost too, not physically, but you're driving from something, not to something. The planes recognize their own. Jenna gripped the wheel tighter. It wasn't wrong. The divorce papers in her glove compartment, the job she'd quit without notice, the life in Denver she'd abandoned. She was running east with no more purpose than this thing beside her. What happens when you catch up to whatever left you? I become myself again, or I become nothing. Either is better than this endless between. It pressed a hand, was it a hand, against the window, left prints that looked like fossil ferns. But I never catch up. The east keeps moving. The sun keeps rising ahead of me. They passed a sign. Rest stop 2 miles. The same rest stop where she'd picked it up. But that was impossible. They'd been driving east for an hour. The planes play tricks, the hitchhiker said. Distance is just an agreement out here. We can agree to something different. I want to keep going east, to St. Louis. Then we will. But first, a question. What are you hoping to find there? Jenna thought about it. Her sister lived in St. Louis, but they hadn't talked in years. She had no job waiting, no plan. Just movement for the sake of movement. Nothing, she admitted. Just not Denver. Then you and I are the same, traveling toward nothing, away from something. The hitchhiker began to unfold, revealing dimensions that hurt to perceive. I could teach you how to walk between miles, how to be in motion without movement, how to become what the landscape needs. I don't want to become whatever you are. No, look at yourself. Really look. Jenna glanced in the rear-view mirror. Her reflection was wrong. Eyes too bright, skin with the texture of prairie grass, hair that moved like wheat in wind she couldn't feel. She'd been changing too, mile by mile, becoming something the interstate recognized as its own. Stop it. She slammed on the brakes, pulled onto the shoulder. Get out, get out. The hitchhiker flowed out of the car like water, stood on the shoulder, patient again, thumb already extended for the next traveler. You can't run from it, it called as she accelerated away. The plains have tasted you now. Every highway leads back here. Every direction becomes east. Jenna drove faster, pushing her car to its limits. The speedometer climbed 80, 90, 100. But the mile markers stopped making sense. Mile 247, mile 183, mile 391. Numbers that shouldn't exist on this stretch of I-70. The sun should be rising. She'd been driving all night. But the darkness persisted, and in her mirrors, she could see the hitchhiker. Always the same distance behind. Walking, but keeping pace with her speeding car, she took the next exit, any exit, needing to break the straight line of the interstate. Found herself on a 2-lane road that led into prairie darkness. Her GPS showed no location, just a pulsing dot in a void of unmapped territory. The car sputtered, died, out of gas, though the gauge read half full. Jenna got out, looked around. Nothing but grass and stars, and the sense of something vast paying attention. Behind her, footsteps. The hitchhiker, patient as erosion. Ready to stop running, it asked. Ready to accept what you're becoming. Jenna looked at her hands. They flickered between human and something else. Something that belonged to the in-between spaces of America. The distances that swallowed travelers and reformed them into warnings for others. What am I becoming? What I am. A marker. A sign that says, here be dragons in a language only the lost can read. The hitchhiker extended what might have been a hand. Walk with me. East, always east. We'll teach others what we've learned, that some roads don't lead anywhere. Some journeys don't end. Some things that look like people are just the highway's way of populating itself. Jenna had a choice. Fight it. Try to find her way back to the interstate. Pretend the changes weren't happening. Or accept it. Become another warning, another helper. Another thing that stood at rest stops waiting for the lost to offer rides to nowhere. She thought of Denver, of the life she'd fled, of St. Louis, where nothing waited, of all the in-between spaces where people like her ended up, neither here nor there, neither human nor other. She took the hitchhiker's hand. It felt like gripping wind given form. Together they walked east. By the time the sun rose, or didn't rise, time was negotiable here. They were standing at another rest stop, same as the first, different as everything. A car approached, slowed. A driver, eyes bright with the particular desperation of the recently lost, rolled down their window. "Where you headed?" they asked. "East," Jenna heard herself say with a voice like wind through wheat. "Always east, following the sunrise that never comes." The driver unlocked their door. The cycle continued. The highway collected its due. And somewhere in Kansas, things that used to be people stood at rest stops, offering rides to nowhere, teaching the lost how to become landmarks in the vast American emptiness. Because some roads didn't lead anywhere except deeper into themselves. And some hitchhikers weren't looking for rides. They were looking for recruits. The Museum Night Guard. The Natural History Museum hired Carlos for the night shift because he had a military background and didn't ask too many questions about the hazard pay. $25 an hour to walk through dark halls full of dead things seemed like easy money after Afghanistan. His training was perfunctory. Dave, the head of security, walked him through the routes, showed him the locks, explained the alarm system. When they reached the new acquisition wing, Dave paused. "This section's special. Dr. Morrison's collection. He died last year, left everything to the museum. Weird stuff. Specimens from places that aren't on maps. Just, if anything seems off in there, don't investigate. Log it and move on." "Define off," Carlos said. Dave struggled for words. "You'll know it when you see it. Or hear it. Or just trust me. Log and move." Carlos's first week was quiet. The museum after hours was peaceful, even beautiful. Moonlight through skylights illuminated dinosaur bones and dioramas. His footsteps echoed in the vast spaces. He developed a rhythm. Main hall, Egypt wing, minerals, fossils, mammals, new acquisitions, repeat. The Morrison collection was unsettling even in daylight. No proper labels, just number codes. Specimens in jars that defied taxonomy. Things with too many limbs, or not enough. Or limbs in the wrong places. Fossils that hurt to look at. Their geometry suggesting evolution had taken turns that were mathematically impossible. But they were dead. Preserved. Harmless. Until the 8th night. Carlos was in the mineral hall when he heard it. A sound like glass breaking, but wet. Coming from the Morrison wing. He jogged toward it, hand on his flashlight, the other on his radio. The collection room was wrong, not dramatically. Everything was still in place. But the preservation jars were cloudy now, their contents obscured. And the air smelled like formaldehyde mixed with something else, something alive. He did what Dave said, logged it. Unusual odor and condensation in Morrison wing, 2:47 a.m., moved on. Tried to ignore the sounds that followed him, like something learning to walk on limbs it had just grown. By 4 a.m., the sounds were bolder, not just in the Morrison wing but spreading. Wet footsteps in the mammal hall, scratching inside the mineral displays, and whispers in a language that predated human speech. Carlos found Dave's real logbook hidden in the security office. Not the official one, but a battered notebook filled with entries going back decades. The Morrison collection feeds at night. Do not interfere. Specimen 447 mobile again. Return to jar by dawn. New guard quit after seeing specimen 231's true form. Need better screening. They're learning, mimicking. Found specimen 089 wearing Johnson's face. Had to burn it. Carlos set down the notebook, hand shaking. Through the security monitors, he could see movement in every wing. Things that should be dead and preserved exploring their captivity. He armed himself with a flashlight and his radio, determined to document everything. In the Morrison wing, the jars were empty. All of them. Their contents had emerged, leaving behind cloudy fluid and the suggestion of impossible shapes. A trail of moisture led from the collection room into the main museum. Carlos followed it, even as every instinct screamed to run. The trail led to the mammal dioramas, where something was rearranging the displays. The Arctic scene was wrong. The posed wolves were facing outward now, toward the glass, toward viewers that weren't there. And among them was something new, something that wore fur like an ill-fitting coat, that stood on legs that bent in too many places, that had eyes where eyes shouldn't be. It was playing, posing with the wolves, trying different positions, learning how to look natural, how to look like something that belonged in the known world. Specimen 231, Carlos whispered, remembering the logbook. It turned at his voice. Under the fur, he could see its true form, something between liquid and solid, between plant and animal, between real and nightmare. It had no fixed shape, just the intention of shape, the attempt at form. "Guard," it said in a voice like grinding pearls. "You're new. The others run by now. What are you?" Dr. Morrison found us, in the deep places, the between places, where evolution went wrong, or right, depending on perspective. It shifted, trying on a new shape, something almost human, but not quite. He preserved us, brought us here, but preservation is just another word for sleeping, and you wake up at night. We wake when watched, when thought about, when acknowledged. It gestured to the other dioramas, where more wrong things were emerging, wearing the skins of extinct animals, pretending to be part of the display. The museum teaches people what lived. We teach them what shouldn't live, what does live despite logic. Carlos backed away, but the things were everywhere now. In every display, something wrong posed among the right. They weren't aggressive, just curious, learning, adapting. "Why don't you leave?" he asked. "Where would we go? We're not from here, not from anywhere maps show." Dr. Morrison understood. "Give us a place to be, and we'll stay. Try to fit in, try to belong." Specimen 231 adjusted its wolf costume, almost got it right. "We just want to be part of the collection, part of the teaching." "Teaching what?" "That nature has no rules, only suggestions. That between every known species is an unknown one. That preservation is a lie humans tell themselves." It smiled with too many mouths. "Want to see our favorite display?" Against all wisdom, Carlos followed. They led him to a new exhibit he'd never noticed before. "Evolution of the Security Guard," the placard read. Inside were figures in uniforms from different eras, and at the end, a space waiting, his size, his shape. The others who didn't run, who stayed to learn, who understood that guarding means being part of what you guard. Specimen 231 gestured to the waiting space. We preserve them. They preserve us. Circle of life, as you say. Carlos ran then, through halls where wrong things wore right skins, past displays where the extinct mingled with the never should have existed, out into the dawn that was just breaking. He quit that morning. Didn't even go back for his last paycheck. But the museum followed him. In every natural history display he passed, he saw them. The wrong things posing among the right. The preserved things that woke when acknowledged. And sometimes, in his dreams, he stood in that display case, wearing his uniform, preserved, part of the collection, guarding things that shouldn't exist but did, teaching visitors about the evolution of the security guard, the natural history of those who looked too close at what Dr. Morrison had found in the deep places. The museum kept hiring night guards. They kept quitting, or they didn't, and became part of the exhibition. Either way, the Morrison collection was tended. The specimens had their playground, and nature's suggestions continued to be bent into impossible shapes that posed as education. Somewhere, Dr. Morrison's preserved corpse probably smiled. He'd always wanted his collection to be interactive. He'd succeeded beyond anyone's nightmares, except those of the night guards who had to walk among them, pretending dead things stayed dead, pretending preservation meant permanent, pretending the things in the jars weren't learning how to look like them. The subway maintenance tunnel. The job posting was vague. Maintenance technician needed for NYC subway system. Night shifts. Must be comfortable in confined spaces. 35 bars hour plus hazard pay. Kim needed the money badly enough not to ask what the hazards were. Her supervisor, Reg, was a 30-year veteran with eyes that had seen too much. He led her through the bowels of Grand Central, past the public platforms, into the maintenance tunnels that ran parallel to the tracks. Rules, he said, voice echoing off sweating pipes. Stay out of the old tunnels. Anything built before 1940. Don't follow sounds that seem like they need fixing. And if you see something that shouldn't be there, don't acknowledge it. Just back away and find another route. What kind of something? Reggie paused at a junction where 3 tunnels met. The city's old, built on top of itself. Sometimes when you dig, you find things that were better left buried. Sometimes those things find their way into the tunnels. Kim thought he was hazing her. Old-timer trying to spook the newbie. She'd worked construction, crawled through plenty of dark spaces. This was just another job. Her first month was routine. Check ventilation systems, inspect cables, clear debris. The tunnels were a maze, but she learned them quickly. The official ones, anyway. The ones on the maps. It was week 5 when she found the first unofficial tunnel. She was replacing a faulty junction box when her flashlight beam caught an opening that shouldn't exist. Not on her map, not in the schematics. Just a ragged hole in the concrete. Edges smooth like something had melted through. The tunnel beyond was different. Older concrete, different construction technique. Pre-war, definitely. She should have reported it, followed Reggie's rules. Instead, she crawled inside. The tunnel sloped down at an angle that made no architectural sense. The walls were carved with symbols that hurt to look at directly. Not quite writing, not quite art. Something that predated both. And it was warm. Subway tunnels were cool, but this radiated heat like a living thing. 20 feet in, she found the first cocoon. It hung from the ceiling, man-sized, made of something between spider silk and mucus. Through the translucent surface, she could see a shape. Humanoid but wrong. Too many joints, limbs that branched into fractals. And it was moving, slowly, like something not quite ready to be born. Kim scrambled backward, heart hammering. But at the tunnel mouth, she found Reg waiting.
"Told you to stay out of the old tunnels," he said sadly.
What the hell is that thing? Don't know. Don't want to know. They've been down here longer than the subway. Maybe longer than the city. He helped her stand, guided her away from the hole. We work around them, maintain what we can reach, leave them to their process. Process. They're changing. Been changing since we first broke into their space in 1904. Adapting to us, maybe. Or adapting us to them. He showed her his left hand. The fingers were fused together, skin with a texture like the cocoon material. 30 years of small exposures, small changes, part of the job. Kim stared at his transformed hand. We should tell someone. The authorities. They know. Everyone who matters knows. But what are they going to do? Shut down the subway? Evacuate Manhattan? The city needs its trains, and the trains need maintenance, and someone has to work around the things in the old tunnels. This is insane. This is New York. We built on graveyards, on native sites, on Dutch ruins. Layer after layer, each stranger than the last. And sometimes we built into spaces that were already occupied. Kim wanted to quit right then. But Reg was right about one thing. She needed the money. And now that she'd seen it, she couldn't unsee it. Every tunnel junction might hide another passage. Every shadow might conceal another cocoon. She adapted. Learned which tunnels to avoid, which sounds to ignore. The chittering that echoed from the deep places. The wet slithering of things moving through spaces too small for their size. The whispers in languages that predated human speech. But the things in the tunnels were learning too. Week 8, Kim found a cocoon in a modern tunnel. Fresh, still wet, containing something that looked almost human. Wearing the remains of an MTA uniform. A maintenance worker who'd gone missing the previous month. They're spreading, she told Reg. He nodded grimly. They do that. Every few years they push out a bit more. We push back. Seal tunnels, reroute trains. But they're patient, and they're changing. Changing how? Becoming more like us, or making us more like them. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. Kim started noticing the other maintenance workers, how they moved through the tunnels with inhuman grace, how their eyes reflected her flashlight in colors that didn't belong in human eyes, how they sometimes spoke to each other in clicking sounds that resembled the chittering from the deep places. How many of the crew are still human? She asked Reg one night. He laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Define human. We all started that way. But the tunnels change you. The exposure changes you. Eventually, you're something in between. Still doing the job, still maintaining the system, but not quite what you were. And the cocoons? Final stage, maybe. When you've changed enough that the old form doesn't fit. When it's time to become something that can live down here permanently. He looked at his fused hand, flexed it. I've got maybe a year before I need to cocoon. Then someone else will train the newbies, explain the rules, pretend this is normal. Kim felt her own changes starting. Better night vision, an ability to navigate tunnels without checking her map. Skin that didn't sweat despite the heat. Small things, but adding up. The breaking point came week 12. She was checking ventilation near Columbus Circle when she heard it. A train on tracks that didn't exist. She followed the sound through a maintenance door into a tunnel that wasn't on any map. The train was there, an old model, pre-war, but wrong. Organic somehow, like something had grown in the shape of a train. The windows glowed with bioluminescence, and through them she could see passengers. They'd been human once. Now they were transitional things, part flesh, part something else. They sat in patient rows, hands folded, waiting for a destination that didn't exist. The conductor was furthest along in the change, more tentacle than limb, more eye than face, but still wearing the uniform, still doing the job. All aboard, it called to her in a voice like drowning. Next stop, the deep stations, the old platforms, where the city really lives. Kim ran. Up through the tunnels, past cocooning workers, past things that chittered in the darkness. She burst onto the street, into blessed daylight, into a world that didn't know what moved beneath it. She quit that day. No notice, no explanation. Just walked away from the job, the money, the slow transformation. But the city's underground had marked her. She could feel the tunnels calling, feel her changed cells wanting to continue their metamorphosis. She left New York, moved to a small town in Kansas with no subways, no tunnels, no layers of history pressing down. But sometimes, in her dreams, she rode that organic train through tunnels that existed outside geometry, sat with the other passengers, all in various stages of becoming, traveled to the deep stations where things that had never been human tended machinery made of bone and sinew, and sometimes, on quiet nights, she could feel her skin wanting to cocoon, could feel the urge to return to New York, to crawl back into those tunnels, to finish what the exposure had started. Because the city needed its trains. The trains needed maintenance. And something had to evolve to tend the deep places, the old places, the spaces between the official tunnels where evolution had taken different turns. Kim resisted, stayed in Kansas, stayed human, mostly. But in New York, in the tunnels beneath the city, things that had once been maintenance workers continued their duties, checking systems that were part machine, part organism, clearing debris that might have been alive, ensuring the smooth operation of a transportation system that served more than just human passengers. And in the deepest tunnels, in the oldest spaces, new cocoons hung, waiting, changing, preparing the next generation of workers for jobs that required more than human capabilities. The city evolved. Its servants evolved with it. And somewhere, on tracks that didn't officially exist, trains that were never built carried passengers who'd never been born to stations that appeared on no maps, all maintained by things that had once been human, once been workers, once been people who'd answered a vague job posting and descended into the tunnels, thinking it was just another job, thinking transformation was optional, thinking the hazard pay was worth the hazards. The roadside attraction. The billboard appeared somewhere between Flagstaff and Albuquerque, weathered but insistent. Mystery spot. See the thing that shouldn't be. Next exit. Rachel had driven this route dozens of times and never seen it before. She was exhausted, running on gas station coffee and determination, trying to make Dallas by morning. But something about the sign nagged at her. Maybe it was the way shouldn't be seemed to shimmer, or how the exit number kept changing when she wasn't looking directly at it. Against her better judgment, she took the exit. The road was barely paved, winding into scrubland that looked abandoned by both God and GPS. Her phone lost signal immediately. The only sign of civilization was another billboard. Mystery spot, 5 miles. with an arrow pointing into deeper nowhere. Rachel almost turned back 3 times, but each time she slowed to U-turn, another sign appeared. 4 miles, 3 miles, 2 miles, always when she was about to quit, pulling her forward with promises of something unprecedented. The mystery spot, when she finally reached it, was disappointing. A cluster of tin-roofed buildings that might have been prosperous in the 1960s. A gravel parking lot with one other car, dust-covered, license plate too faded to read, and a ticket booth manned by an old woman who looked assembled from leather and determination. $20, the woman said before Rachel could speak. Cash only. No refunds, no photographs. Management not responsible for changes in perception, belief systems, or molecular structure. Molecular structure. Legal disclaimer, lawyers. The woman spat into the dust. You want to see it or not? Rachel had driven this far. She handed over a 20, received a ticket that felt oddly warm, like fresh bread. Through the red door, the woman instructed. Follow the path. Don't touch anything. Don't feed it. Don't make eye contact for more than 3 seconds. Enjoy your visit. The red door opened onto a path lit by Christmas lights strung between poles. The desert air was cooler here, wrong for the season. Rachel followed the lights through a sculpture garden of rusted metal and found objects, past a gift shop that seemed to sell nothing but postcards of places that didn't exist. The path ended at a structure that hurt to perceive. It might have been a building, but the angles were wrong. Walls met at impossible junctions. The roof sloped in directions that shouldn't exist. Looking at it too long made her teeth ache. A sign read, "The thing that shouldn't be, discovered 1952, nature unknown." Inside was worse. The space was larger than the outside suggested, lit by sources she couldn't identify. And in the center, behind ropes like a museum exhibit, was the thing. Rachel's mind couldn't process it properly. It was like looking at an optical illusion that never resolved. One moment it seemed biological, all writhing tentacles and too many eyes. The next, mechanical, gears and circuits in configurations that violated physics. Then, mineral, crystalline, growing in patterns that suggested intelligence. It was all of these, none of these. Something between states, between definitions, between the categories humans use to understand reality. And it was looking at her. Not with eyes exactly, but she felt its attention like weight, like drowning, like the universe suddenly caring too much about one specific person. The 3-second rule made sense now. At 4 seconds, she started to understand what she was seeing. At 5 seconds, that understanding threatened to rewrite everything she knew. She looked away, gasping. Around the thing were other exhibits. Artifacts, the signs called them. Objects the thing had influenced, created, transformed. A Toyota Corolla that phased in and out of existence. A cactus growing in non-Euclidean spirals. A payphone that rang with calls from never. First time. Rachel spun. A man stood near the exit, wearing a mystery spot t-shirt that looked older than the buildings. His face was normal, except for his eyes, which held depths that didn't belong in human skulls. "Yeah," she managed. "It's a lot. Gets easier. Or harder. Depends on how you adapt." He gestured at the thing. "Been here since '52. Family found it while drilling for water, instead of covering it up like sensible people. They built this. What is it? Nobody knows. Maybe it doesn't know. It just is. A point where reality got confused about its own rules." He smiled, and his teeth were slightly too sharp. "But it's educational. shows people that the universe isn't as solid as they think, that between every known thing is an unknown thing, waiting. Waiting for what? Recognition, acknowledgement, worship maybe, or just company. He moved closer, and Rachel saw his mystery spot shirt had a date, 1987. I came through on a road trip, just like you. Saw the billboard, took the exit. That was, time works different here. Could be last year, could be last century. Rachel backed toward the exit. I should go. Sure, gift shops on the way out. Martha makes excellent postcards. Views of places you can't quite remember, but can't quite forget. He didn't follow, just watched with those two deep eyes. But you'll think about it. The thing, what it means. What else might be out there waiting in roadside attractions, pretending to be kitsch? Rachel fled. Through the gift shop, where Martha, was that the ticket booth woman, tried to sell her a snow globe containing a miniature thing that moved when you didn't look at it. Past the sculpture garden, where the metal shapes had rearranged themselves into patterns that suggested language. To her car, blessedly normal, engine starting on the first try. But as she drove back to the highway, she knew the man was right. She would think about it. The thing that existed outside categories. The proof that reality was more negotiable than she'd believed. The terrible possibility that every cheesy roadside attraction might hide something genuinely unprecedented. The highway welcomed her back, solid and real. But 20 miles down the road, she saw another billboard. World's largest ball of twine. But what's inside? Next exit. She didn't take that exit, but she slowed, wondered what else was out there, hiding in plain sight behind tourist trap facades. What other things that shouldn't be were waiting to be discovered, charging $20 to shatter worldviews. Rachel drove to Dallas, delivered her presentation, lived her life, but she kept the ticket from the mystery spot, and sometimes, late at night, it would grow warm in her wallet. A reminder that she'd seen something impossible, that the universe was stranger than anyone suspected, and that somewhere in the desert between Flagstaff and Albuquerque, behind a red door and a legal disclaimer, a thing that defied classification waited for the next traveler to take an exit they'd never seen before. Waited to teach them that shouldn't be was just another way of saying is despite everything. Waited to add another name to its guest book of the transformed. The Warehouse Night Picker. Technoship Distribution hired Maya for the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift at their massive fulfillment center outside Memphis. The pay was good, the work was straightforward. Pick items from shelves, pack boxes, meet quotas. The warehouse was the size of 12 football fields, filled with everything from phone cases to furniture. During orientation, her supervisor, Brad, had been oddly specific about certain sections. Aisles A through R are standard picking. S through Z are special handling. You'll get S through Z orders sometimes. Just follow protocol. Pick, pack, don't examine. And if you see anything unusual, log it, but don't investigate. Unusual how? You'll know if it happens. Probably won't. Just standard corporate liability stuff. Maya's first 2 weeks were mind-numbing normalcy. Pick lists on her scanner, items from shelves, boxes on conveyor belts. The warehouse at night was its own world. Thousands of workers moving like ants through the massive space, guided by algorithms and efficiency metrics. It was night 15 when she got her first S aisle pick. The scanner directed her to S Rodriff 14, shelf position she'd never seen before. The S section was different immediately. Older shelving, different lighting, and cold. Her breath came out in clouds despite the warehouse maintaining a steady 72 degrees elsewhere. The item location led her deep into the aisle. The products here had no labels she recognized, just alphanumeric codes. Some packages vibrated slightly. Others seemed to bend light around them. One shelf was entirely empty except for a sign. "Do not stock here. Dimensional instability." Her target was on a middle shelf. Item Sex Un47. A box about the size of a shoebox, wrapped in material that felt like plastic but moved like skin. The shipping label was standard except for the destination, an address that was just coordinates, no city or state. Maya followed protocol. Pick, scan, don't examine. But as she carried the box back, she felt movement inside. Not shifting contents, deliberate movement, like something testing the boundaries of its container. She packed it, sent it down the conveyor, tried to forget about it. But more S-aisle picks came. Items that hummed with frequency she felt in her bones. Packages that were lighter than air but required 2 hands to lift. A cylinder that stayed perfectly still while everything around it seemed to rotate. "What is this stuff?" she asked Darren, a 5-year veteran who worked the next zone. He glanced around nervously. Special contracts, government, maybe, or companies that don't officially exist. The warehouse stores things that can't go through normal channels. We don't ask questions. But what if it's dangerous? That's what the hazard pay is for. Just follow protocol. Pick, pack, don't think about it. But Maya couldn't stop thinking about it, especially after the night she saw one of the packages open. She was in T aisle, picking a normal order when she heard the sound, like tearing paper, but wet. From the S section, a pale light was growing. Against every protocol she investigated, a package had split open on shelf S7. Not damaged, open from the inside. What emerged defied easy description. It was like smoke given nervous system, vapor with intent. It flowed up the shelving, examining other packages with appendages that existed only when it needed them. Maya froze, watching it inspect its surroundings with obvious intelligence. It found another package, one of the vibrating ones, and seemed to communicate through frequencies she couldn't hear, but felt in her fillings. More packages began opening, not many, but enough. Things emerged that her mind refused to fully process. Geometries that folded through themselves, creatures of living information, objects that existed in states between states. They weren't hostile. They seemed confused, like they'd been sleeping and suddenly woke up in a warehouse. They examined their surroundings, tested the air, tasted the electromagnetic spectrum of the fluorescent lights. Then they began to shop. That was the only word for it. These impossible things moved through the aisles, selecting items. One creature of crystallized time picked up a smartphone, absorbed its data through touch, set it back dissatisfied. A being of pure probability sampled perfumes, existing at all possible smell points simultaneously. First time seeing it? Maya jumped. A woman in a technoship vest stood beside her, but wrong. Her badge showed a photo that kept changing, and her eyes held the depth of someone who'd seen too much. What are they? Customers. The real customers. Everything else, the human orders, that's just cover. Camouflage. The woman smiled with too many teeth. The warehouse exists to serve them. Things that can't shop in normal reality. Things that need products but can't risk exposure to daylight, to normal physics, to consensus reality. This is insane. This is commerce, supply and demand. They need things from our reality. We We get paid in money that folds through more than 3 dimensions, but the banks never complain. Maya watched a thing made of living shadow carefully select 17 identical coffee makers, paying with currency that looked like crystallized concepts. Why coffee makers? Who knows? Maybe it likes coffee. Maybe coffee makers are holy relics in its dimension. Maybe it's building something we can't imagine. The woman shrugged. We don't judge our customers. And we just let them. Night shift, honey. We facilitate. We pick their orders when they're too abstract to shop themselves. We pack things into containers that exist in multiple states. We ship to addresses that aren't on any map. She pulled out a scanner that showed impossible readings. Want to see something really wild? She led Maya to the ZZ section, the deepest part of the warehouse. Here, the shelves themselves were products. For sale were concepts, abstractions, things that couldn't exist but did. A jar of Thursday, a box of the feeling of déjà vu, a 6-pack of probability collapse. They buy these? Maya asked. Oh yes, very popular. Especially the temporal stuff. You'd be surprised how many entities need a spare Tuesday. The woman picked up a container labeled The Sound of Purple and scanned it. This one's been on back order for months. Who are you? I was Maya, or will be. Time gets fluid when you work here long enough. She showed her badge. The photo was Maya, but older, stranger, adapted to impossible realities. Night shift changes you, exposes you to things outside normal physics. Eventually, you're more like them than us, better able to serve the real customers. I could quit. Could you? Check your employment contract, the real one, the one written in languages that predate human speech. Maya felt for her phone, wanted to call someone, anyone, but she knew it would be useless. Who would believe her? And more importantly, who wasn't already part of it? The warehouse was massive, employed thousands. How many knew? How many had seen the things shop at night and simply adapted? A chime sounded. The things shopping began to fade, returning to their packages, sealing themselves away. Dawn was coming, and with it, the return to normal physics. Day shift starts soon, Future Maya said. Regular humans, regular orders, the camouflage shift. But tonight, you've seen the truth. The warehouse serves 2 markets, and the night market, the real market, needs workers who can handle impossible inventory. Maya returned to her station, tried to pretend nothing had changed, but she couldn't unsee it. Every package might contain something unprecedented. Every order might be from a customer that existed outside normal space. She kept working. What else could she do? The pay was good. The work was educational. And slowly, night by night, she adapted. Learned to read labels written in living languages. Learned to pack things that existed in superposition. Learned to take orders from customers whose very presence warped local reality. The warehouse never slept. Day shift handled the human world. Night shift handled everything else. And workers like Maya, like all the versions of Maya, kept the impossible commerce flowing. Because somewhere, somewhen, a thing needed coffee makers. Another thing required the concept of Wednesday, and the global economy, the real economy that existed in dimensions humans couldn't see, depended on night shift workers who could pick, pack, and ship without asking too many questions, without wondering what the things did with their purchases, without thinking about what kind of world needed a warehouse full of impossibilities, without questioning why their paychecks cleared in currencies that shouldn't exist.